Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Silicon Insider podcast. Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. Hey, nice to see you.
Any hot stories going on this week?
Gosh, it's been another week of tariffs, another week of chip ups and downs, and the Fed's keeping rates the same, so no big moves, no big surprises so far. It's early.
Okay, le plus que change, the plus que même chose. Okay, so I want to begin with kind of a potpourri, then we'll get into other stuff. Um, one piece of news this week is that OpenAI, the folks behind ChatGPT, have decided to remain a nonprofit. Remember, they were making noises and it was causing Elon, to get all excited and all that they were going to go for profit. And I guess, and it led to the departure of the CEO, the founder, and they came back. But I guess now it's settled. The board has decided nonprofit. Is that a good thing or bad thing?
I think it's a thing that doesn't really matter to those who use OpenAI and ChatGPT. I think startups do one thing really well. They make money for investors if they're successful. And OpenAI has been one of the most successful at doing that in history. So you can call it a nonprofit, but look how much they're worth as far as a value, how much they're likely to be worth in the public market. We don't know if they can ever become profitable. But look, they're all about making money and generating, value for investors. So you can call yourself a nonprofit. And if they stick to the idea of trying to make AI even a little bit safer and less intrusive than it looks like it's going to be, then good for them. But let's be honest, we know what this company and this industry is all about.
Yeah, but when you hear about a nonprofit being worth billions, you think of the Ford Foundation or something. Not a company that's kind of a pseudo corporation, not a corporation.
I mean, I would only push back on that to say the Ford Foundation is worth so much because Ford, the company, is worth that much. And here
Yeah,
in Silicon Valley, we have a good example. The long time Hewlett Packard Foundation made
yeah,
so much money in charitable donations. How were they able to do that? Because a long time ago, they took a chunk of stock and set it aside. And the actual for-profit corporation, HP, did so well for so long, it was able to make all those charitable donations. We saw that also with companies like Applied Materials. So if you first admit, hey, we're here to make money, that's
yeah.
great. We get it. That creates jobs and value, but it also often allows you to set aside money for good things and charitable donations as well. But that doesn't make Hewlett Packard or Applied Materials or Ford a
Yeah.
nonprofit, right?
No, an interesting story is that Pierre Omidyar and Jeff Skoll, they actually created a foundation out of the gate. They were feeding stock into it long before they were public. And
Right.
I know that's worth a lot of money. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing. We seem to be not only rethinking the nature of a company here in Silicon Valley, but we're also doing the same thing for nonprofits in an interesting way.
Yeah, and what they did with eBay was very interesting and lucrative and did a great job for a whole lot of charities because the company itself did so well as a for-profit company.
Literally doing well by doing well.
Yes.
Okay, let's switch to the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell announced this week that they're going to hold interest rates right where they're at for right now. Uh, and it's the old bugaboo. We don't know where tariffs are going, and we don't want to predict it and get caught going the wrong, zigging when we should be zagging and all that. But he did come out with a warning that there's a distinct risk of economic stagnation. I mean, combined with inflation, it would literally be what we've long talked about in the past, stagflation. And I haven't heard him use that term yet, but he used it this week that until we know what's going on, we don't dare move, but we better be wary of, a combination of inflation and economic downturn. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think he's right. And I think what we look at as a non-event, with the Fed not moving rates, makes sense because we don't have clarity looking forward. And so how can they make a move that is so forward thinking as to raise or lower interest rates without that clarity? And despite what the president is saying, oh, Powell's always behind and this, that, and the other, I think he's doing the right thing by admitting we don't know what's ahead. And sure, we might come out on the plus side, but he's right also to be transparent about what could happen if the economy does slow down because of all this.
Yeah, I noticed President Trump has been pushing for lowering interest rates, but I think the American and the stock market seems to be bullish on the economy and predicting that tariffs are going to come out okay. The Fed is being very conservative, and I think the American people are not. I don't think they were upset by interest rates not being lowered. I mean, prices are coming down on certain things. We'll talk in a minute about a price going up, but everybody seems to be just kind of like holding their breath. Let's go on. I mean, the fact that trade negotiations often go out for a year or more is a little disquieting. I must admit, if we're like this at Christmas time, I think there's going to be hell to pay.
Well, look, we could be a lot different by Christmas time. We could have considerably higher prices and considerably less inventory by Christmas time. So things could be markedly worse if we don't figure out as a nation what to do about these tariffs and actually see whatever we're putting into play get implemented. That's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen with tariffs because they've been on, they've been off, they're
Right.
on with China, they're off in other places. These deals, and I put that in air quotes, are waiting to be made. We just don't know. And therefore, what are we now in month 5? By month 12, when everybody's shopping for their presents, we could be in a calm state because we've got these deals and things are fine. Or we could be in a state of, wait a minute, I'm looking for this product on the shelf, and there are few of them, and those that are there are much more expensive because of these tariffs.
Yeah, because the one thing we do know in all this is that China makes toys
Right.
and tchotchkes. And, that's exactly the kind of thing we all give each other at Christmas time. And, if that deal isn't settled. Now, the market's up because China's actually meeting, I think, in Paris this weekend with U.S. trade negotiators, even though China's denying it. Apparently, it's happening. And the market's like, yay, let's go. It's going to take off now. It's all going to get settled. I don't see any indication that China is wavering in any way except for secretly holding this meeting. Do you see any indicators that way? I mean, I haven't seen anything but China denying it, but they're actually going to come. But that doesn't mean they're going to agree to anything.
Right. We don't know that they're going to agree to anything. I think it's important that the two sides that are both very stubborn and both have huge economies are going to meet, because without that meeting, what are we looking at, like 145% tariffs? Tell me that's not going to make people upset around Christmas time. So I think the best news, given how determined President Trump seems to be about these tariffs, the best news is that we might sit down with China and figure something out. And I wouldn't be surprised if TikTok is on the table as well.
Well, my sense is Xi is the key to all this. He runs the country. His word is law. He doesn't have anybody disagree with him anymore over there. And he's going to remain intransigent, not because we're going to offer a better deal. I think it's because that economy is in real trouble. We're starting to see riots and everything else over there.
I mean, I think he wants some sort of a deal, but so far he hasn't blinked. And so we don't really know what's going on in China because they're much more secretive about that sort of thing. But we do know how it's going to affect our products and our toys and our clothing and our iPhones. And so we have plenty to be worried about when it comes to our own situation.
Well, I think we've seen the very first example of tariffs impacting the American economy, and that is Ford this week announced it was going to raise prices on all Mexican-made Fords. And
Right.
that's basically the biggest company, the biggest automobile company left solely or mostly in America. That's going to have an impact when you go down to buy your new F-150 and it's $10,000 more.
Right. And I expect to see once this kicks in, there's going to be a really interesting window on car lots where one car that came in before the tariffs kicked in and the car next to it, which is the exact same vehicle, are maybe $10,000 separate. And so more than ever, really check that sticker and figure out what you're buying, and it may be the
Yeah.
same thing that you can get for considerably less.
Well, I think we know which cars are going to go first.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit again about AI. I don't want to go into it too deeply, but Supermicro had the roller coaster company just had terrible numbers. I think the estimate was 40% and it came in, or estimate is 50%, came in at 40%. And the company's saying that its customers are deciding between Hopper, the old Nvidia chip, and is it Blackwell, the new one? And they're waiting to decide when delivery dates are going to be and all that. So Supermicro's on hold. Now, do you believe that? I mean, they've had an excuse. They've had a lot of excuses over the last year for bad performance. Are you buying this one?
No, not really. I think the blip for them isn't the bad performance. My hot take is that the blip for them was the big run up, that they got sort of mixed in with Nvidia and AMD and Broadcom as the hot chips, the hot chip companies when it comes to AI, when maybe they really didn't deserve to, or they just weren't quite ready. They weren't playing on that court. And so when the accounting issues happen and then they can't come up with the sales numbers people expect, I think this is what they really are. They're just of a certain level, but not quite of that super high, let's send the stock price from 30 to 1,000 that we saw very briefly. And, they're being punished for that. But along the way, people made a lot of money. But I just don't think they're quite on the level of the NVIDIAs and Broadcoms and AMDs
not ready for the big leagues.
Perhaps not.
Okay, and now 2 weeks ago we were talking about Meta and its problems, and then last week it was Apple and its problems. Well, this week it's Google's turn to be in the box. Google Alphabet. It depends on who's being sued and what's going on. But this week the DOJ asks the court. Now that the court has decided against Google as a monopoly, DOJ has asked the court to split Google's advertising empire off of Google, and that means ad exchange and double click for publishers. And Sundar Pichai said that could literally kill Google search. Now that's all going on. Meanwhile, and oh, by the way, the stock dropped 8% on that news, which is a huge number in terms of absolute value. I mean, that's billions of dollars. The market, that's how the market responded to it. And then to add insult to injury, to spit on Google's grave, a guy named Eddie Q, who is a senior executive, you're nodding, at Apple, basically predicted that AI will obviate the need in the future for search. And I thought to myself,
I was going to say that may have been the biggest news of all for Google right there and Google investors. That was bad news.
Yeah, and it kind of seems like that should have been obvious to all of us. Now that if you have a device, a program that's doing search for you, that would you would not be required to do your own search at a certain point. And it's kind of doing it already, right? It's searching through all the servers in the world to give you and with machine language to give you an answer. I find that even using Google search now, I get occasionally this, what's obviously AI.
Right.
So, I mean, Google has to know this, right? I mean, ahead of
Yeah,
time, are they hiding
yes.
it?
No, this is something Google knows. This is something we all know, we all deal with. It's a big issue. And look, those of us who have been, by the way, to Apple events over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, we know Eddie Q, and we're familiar with him. Heck, watch a Warrior game. He's the guy with the best seats in the house. When he spoke in court, it was really interesting because Google has been dealing with this for a little while, because for a while, we've been getting those AI search results first, right off the top. Here's what Gemini found for you. And I've wondered, and many people have wondered, it's kind of an open secret. What's Google going to do? It makes its money, and I mean pretty much all of its money, by search and the ads that it gets, that it sells. So the good news, if you're a Google shareholder, is Google changed the ad game once before and figured out how to make that super lucrative.
Right.
Now it's being changed again thanks to AI. And if anyone can figure out how to monetize that, it should be Google. The bad news is it has to figure out a new way to monetize this, because I haven't had to click on a link for some time because Google search just feeds me the AI answers. And Eddie Q is saying what I think a lot of people that are tech watchers have been thinking for a while. The search game has changed so much that the way Google makes money also seems to have changed. I don't know, because we haven't seen their earnings affected yet, but I don't know how Google is going to do it. But they have to figure out a way to monetize this new way of search, or else, right, where is Google? They just kind of go away. Meanwhile, they're still $1.5 trillion company, actually a $2 trillion company. So they'll figure something out. But that is the challenge right now, is how do you make the ad powerhouse that Google is remain a powerhouse without the links, but instead it's just using its own AI. This is its own AI spitting out answers at us.
Well, several comments. First of all, it's going to be a lot harder for Google to do that if it gets stripped of its cash cow, which is its advertising side. I think the good news for Google is it seems to have better AI than Apple does.
Yes.
And it's up there, it's cloud operations and all of that seem to be better than Apple. And Microsoft is, and also ran in search, so, which has an even better one, I think. And so does Amazon, and they're not in the game. So in theory, Google may have a little bit of a window to throw money at this problem and see if they can solve it. The downside, of course, is if they're stripped of all their advertising revenues, that's going to be a much more difficult proposition.
Right. I have confidence they'll figure something out, but it is a new way of search, of getting information via search. And so they have to come up with some way to sell that and monetize that. And that'll be interesting in their next few earning reports to see what they say about it.
Well, maybe they ought to take all those thousands and thousands of 20-year-old employees they have who are supposed to put, 25% of their time on new ideas. Maybe they can focus on that one. That might be a good one for their future employment.
Yes, I'm guessing that's happening. Yes.
Okay. The one other thing is, which is interesting, is that Google has agreed to fund 3 new nuclear power plants. So it sounds like they're going all in on AI. I mean, you don't need a lot of power. You don't need a lot of nuclear power plants unless you have a whole bunch of servers you're going to install. So that, the government's been, ever since 3 Mile Island, the government has been refusing to do nuclear reactors. I think it's going to be the corporate world that actually makes America go nuclear. You agree?
Yeah, Google's not the first company to say they're going to do this, but this seems to be the way. And there are companies that are working on these sort of mini nuclear generators or plants, or whatever they call them. But right, it's a new way to tap into an old source of power, if you will, to try to get AI up and running at the speed and power that they feel they need to do this.
And it works at night. So,
and it works at night, yes.
Yeah, okay. And finally, Nvidia. I just want to talk a second about Nvidia. It just bought a new facility in Silicon Valley. Now, that isn't of interest to anybody outside the Valley, except that for a company that everyone's claiming has lost its edge and, has been kind of suffering the last year, this is an interesting move. They're still expanding. They're still growing. And I think that says something about their optimism about their upcoming products.
I agree. And in every earning report and every interview, Jensen Huang just talks about growth. And remember, a company's stock price is not just what the company's about. Nvidia peaked a little bit ago, and that was some crazy growth, but it's still, as a company, seeing a lot of growth. And so I imagine they're still hiring through what has been a fairly modest dip in their company fortunes.
Okay, and finally, every once in a while, I bring up another discovery that I think might be important. I don't know what that back channel is, but are you getting it too, by the way? Oh, okay. Like I said, every once in a while I see a scientific discovery that I think will come back to revisit us down the line. It might be years, it might be decades, but it could be a world shaker. And the newest one is physicists have captured for the first time ever the image of a free range atom. Now we've seen pictures of atoms in lattices and in crystals and all that, but this is an individual free floating atom out there in kind of a cloud that they created. I don't know what it means, but we seem to be able to now get down to subatomic activity, and that seems to be very important to Moore's law. And we've already seen examples of that. And once again, this seems like the road ahead of us is stretching out even further. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Oh, you're talking deep science.
I'll remind you of this 20 years from now.
Good call.
Okay, that's it for now. You can catch Scott on NBC Bay Area and on Facebook and Twitter, X, and you can catch me here and on the BBC World Radio Business Matters. And I just finished a book.
Hey, congratulations.
2.5 years, 100,000 words.
Wow.
I wrote them so you don't have to read them.
I look forward to reading.
See you next week and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.